Senator Lujan, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to my brothers from Texas, my deepest condolences for all that's happened and for all the lives that have been lost and families that have been impacted, and to everyone that has been on the ground with all those first responders, all the volunteers just helping those families. As my colleagues may know, unfortunately in New Mexico yesterday, the Rio Ruidoso rose to nearly 20 feet in a matter of minutes amid heavy rainfall, sweeping away homes, if you can believe that, in the flows. And we've already lost loved ones out that way. This is an area that was also ravaged by wildfire not too long ago, as we've all had conversations about what needs to be done with FEMA and others, with wildfire, and then the flooding that follows for years and years to follow. Now, today we have witnesses that hope to serve at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration with NOAA, which oversees the National Weather Service, which provides critical forecasting data that Americans rely on to protect their lives. We also know that emergency alerts and the work of NOAA and the National Weather Service does save lives. I appreciate your response, Dr. Jacobs, to the question from Senator Capito. However, Project 2025 has outlined a plan to commercialize the forecasting, which would force American taxpayers to pay private companies to access weather forecasts. Dr. Jacobs and Mr. Jordan, yes or no, do you think Americans should have to pay to access forecasting data to protect the safety of their families and homes from natural disasters? Dr. Jacobs?
No, I think that that's an essential service that all Americans deserve.
Mr. Jordan?
I agree, no.
Dr. Jacobs, in late May, I sent a letter to the National Weather Service along with several of my colleagues regarding the National Weather Service's decision to discontinue translations of weather alerts and forecasts into languages other than English. Those services have now been restored. This created a dangerous gap in access to emergency information for those nearly 68 million people in the United States that speak a language other than English at home.
Florida Live starts now.
Well, good afternoon to you and welcome into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon live on Fox Local and on YouTube. I want to let you know a little bit of what we have ahead of us coming up in our show today and give you a live look at downtown Orlando as well. Coming up in just a little bit, we are going to check in with Savannah Bone at the Gatorland. A lot of exciting things happening there. Another gator rescue over July 4th weekend that a gator appropriately named Uncle Sam. We'll check in, learn about Uncle Sam, and a number of other things going on at Gatorland. Concerns and questions over proposed cuts to NOAA that took center stage with a news conference led by Florida, several members of Florida's congressional delegation, Democratic members of that, I should note, all as the new NOAA administrator nominee faced a confirmation hearing on Capitol Hill and ask us some questions about that as well. So we'll go into that coming up in just a little bit. The city of Key West reinstating its agreement with ICE, one of those 287G agreements, after receiving a warning from the Attorney General. We're going to look into that coming up in a few minutes as well. But we begin this afternoon with a tribute to enslaved workers quietly unveiled at the Florida Capitol. Joining me live now via Zoom to talk about this story is James Call, who's a Capitol reporter with the Tallahassee Democrat and USA Today. And James, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
James, you wrote a really interesting piece on this memorial, this tribute that is called Circle of Chains. We've got some photos that you took of it as well. If you could just kind of talk to us a little bit about this sculpture and this tribute.
Sure. This goes back about 7 years ago. The Florida legislature appropriated $400,000 to memorialize the people who were enslaved and help build the foundation of Florida's economy. The measure was sponsored by then Representative Keon McGee, who's now Miami-Dade Commissioner, and Senator Darrell Rousson of St. Petersburg. it took 7 years to get this statue built, this sculpture built, and it is quite striking. It's right across the street from the state capitol in Memorial Park. That lead image is called the Auction Soul. It's a young woman, barely dressed. She's shackled at the ankles, at the wrists, around the neck, and she's staring at the Union Bank building, which is the oldest standing bank building in the state of Florida. There are farm workers next to her, but the gentleman whose back is facing us in this photo is the one that really struck me. These are life-size statues. And that gentleman, you can see he has broken the chains that bound his wrists. At the same time, he is holding on to the chain that connects him to the others. And this is Steven Whyte's way of, if I could speak for the artist, for the sculpture, of breathing a message of hope into a piece that captures the brutal reality of slavery.
It is certainly a powerful tribute, I think, in a lot of ways. You talked a little bit about kind of how this came about. This was installed in April, correct?
Correct, April 28th, very quietly. It was unannounced, and I still can't get a comment from the Department of Management Services about what is going on. But Senator Rouson is going to conduct some sort of official ribbon cutting and blessing for the sculpture when lawmakers return to Tallahassee in October, the first week of October, to officially recognize it.
And as I understand it, I believe you reported that this is believed to be the only one of its kind on a state capitol grounds.
Yes, isn't that? I find that very striking. There's a little monument, little plaque to slaves, to captured people who died on slave ships on the Tennessee state capitol grounds. But this appears to be the only memorial, the only sculpture on official state capitol grounds in the country. Now, to qualify this a little bit, this is actually located across the street from the Capitol. A couple years ago, lawmakers extended the Capitol grounds across 319, Highway 319, US 27, to take in 4 more blocks. So you can see the Capitol in the background there. This is actually across the street. And this sculpture is next to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, but across Highway 27 from what is now officially known as Memorial Park. Well, this is all Memorial Park, but there's a Memorial Plaza that will house 5 more memorials across Highway 27. The Holocaust Memorial is up, and it is quite striking. A memorial to the Dozier School victims, the boys who were held in captive at a reform school and brutalized, that the state has officially apologized for. That memorial is also there. So, excuse me. But what is developing is a very beautiful memorial park on the grounds of the state capitol. The state capitol at the moment is undergoing a $300 million upgrade and renovations. And the Department of Management Services is just doing a very, very nice job. You all ought to come to Tallahassee and check out how they're transforming the Capitol grounds. It is really a nice piece of landscape architecture that is occurring here in Tallahassee.
James, you talked about speaking with Senator Rouson and his kind of role in this. What is his reaction to kind of seeing this sculpture now?
He thinks it is an excellent piece of public art. I guess I echo what he says about how it forces one into reflection. He loves it. He's very grateful that the state has done it, and he speaks. He praises it. This piece, I mean, you can walk up to it, and although this is metal, it's bronze. I mean, it is so lifelike and striking. You can see you can see eyes. How an artist is able to take metal and bronze and it's unpolished, but you can see the humanity in these figures. You see the scars on the gentleman's back. You see the look of exhaustion in the farm worker's face. The child, the little girl there, it's just a blank stare. It's to me, it's a very moving piece.
Indeed, I think a lot of people would agree with you on that. To see that, I just want to go back to one thing you said earlier, and that was trying to get some more information about this. And you've had kind of trouble getting official word on all of this.
Well, to be fair, I wrote this over a holiday weekend. It's the middle of a summer after a very long legislative session, and people are taking vacations. So I'm sure eventually the Department of Management Services will respond to my inquiries. You know, I have no doubt at some point I will get official word from the Department of Management Services.
And as you said, Senator Rouson plans to hold some sort of ceremony this fall.
Right, and you know, we're talking. I mean, the state again, the statue, the sculpture exists. It's in a prominent place. It's a beautiful piece of art. The Legislative Black Caucus is going to hold an official ceremony. The memories of these people who were enslaved and who built the economy of modern Florida is being honored. And I think, not to speak for Senator Rouson or for Representative McGee, who gave an emotional speech when he introduced the bill in the House of Representatives back in 2017, I just think that they're thrilled with how this has all turned out. And, you know, and this is, and the purpose of public art or Steven Whyte's purpose that he said was to recognize people who have not been recognized for their contributions and to memorialize a community's unique identity and contributions. And this statue, this piece of art, I think, accomplishes that piece. But you know, I'm just some white guy. But but that's the opinion of Senator Darrell Rouson, the Senate sponsor of this piece of the bill that created this piece.
It is striking. It is moving. And it is now unveiled on the state capitol grounds near the old historic Capitol. James Call, Capitol reporter for the Tallahassee Democrat and USA Today. We appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon, live on Fox Local and on YouTube. It is time now for our Tampa Connection, and for that, we go to Fox 13 digital producer Nancy Gay. And Nancy, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon. Good to see you.
It's good to see you as well, Garrett. Thanks for having me. Today we're going to start in Pinellas County, where the man who was convicted of decapitating his newly adopted dog Dexter and then leaving that dog's remains at Fort DeSoto Park has been granted bond while he appeals that conviction. Domingo Rodriguez was sentenced to 1 year and 60 days in jail, and this morning a judge granted him a $55,000 bond. Now, if he does bond out, he must wear a GPS monitor, surrender his driver's license and passport, have no contact with any animals or witnesses in his criminal case, and he must appear in court each month during the appeals process. Now, this is the case that did inspire Dexter's Law, which went into effect earlier this month. Dexter's Law increases punishment for especially heinous animal cruelty cases, and it also establishes an offender database on the Florida Department of Law Enforcement's website. Now, those people who are in that database will be banned from owning, living with, or working with an animal. Rodriguez is expected to be back in court on August 13th. Garrett?
Interesting developments in that case. I know it's one that you and Fox 13 have been following closely, and I'm sure we'll continue to as that appeal process moves forward. Our second story today, and that is some changes to commuters between Tampa and St. Pete.
Yes, this morning, those who were driving on the Howard Franklin Bridge from Pinellas County over into Hillsborough County were shifted onto the old southbound span of the recently refurbished Howard Franklin Bridge. Now, the Florida Department of Transportation said the move was necessary to begin the demolition of the original bridge, which has been in use since the 1960s. Now, more than 200,000 drivers use the Howard Franklin Bridge every day, according to FDOT, and it is considered to be one of the busiest corridors in the Tampa Bay area, and it's busier than the Courtney Campbell, Gandy, and Sunshine Skyway bridges combined. FDOT said commuters shouldn't expect major disruptions during the transition. Demolition of the original 1960s bridge is expected to be complete in the spring of 2026. Garrett?
Quite a process that has been going on there, but that's kind of mind-blowing to hear how many people use that bridge every day.
Yeah, definitely. As I mentioned, it has more travelers going across that bridge every day than the other three major bridges in this area. So it is definitely one of the main corridors connecting Hillsborough County with Pinellas County.
And when you hear those numbers, kind of puts in perspective why that refurbishment was really needed.
Yes, it was built in the 1960s, and then it underwent a refurbishment in the 1990s, and now it's undergoing a complete demolition and complete rebuild. So It's definitely ready for an upgrade.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Story number 3 here, Nancy, and police looking for a burglar.
Yes, and we do have an update to this story. Just before we went on, we learned that Tampa police have actually arrested 2 men in connection with a series of auto thefts between Tampa and in Pinellas County. Police told us that they just arrested 30-year-old Joshua Connor Murdoch, as well as 37-year-old Aaron Alderman. Now, Murdoch was the man they say Murdoch was the man captured on surveillance video on 2 separate occasions using stolen credit cards. They say they were able to identify him because he was seen with distinct tattoos on that surveillance video, and that actually led to his arrest. Now, both of these men were arrested by patrol officers. Tampa police officers said they saw Murdoch and Alderman in a silver Hyundai Elantra with an unregistered tag in the rear parking lot of a Tampa hotel. The officers said they moved quickly to arrest both these men, and that's when they say Murdoch actually violently resisted arrest and struck an officer in the chest with his elbow. Fortunately, that officer was not injured. Now, officers did do a check on that Hyundai Elantra, and they confirmed it was stolen. And during a search of Murdoch's backpack, they found a loaded, stolen handgun. Now, further investigation also showed that Murdoch, who is a convicted felon, was also in possession of methamphetamine. Stolen license plates and additional stolen property were also recovered from that vehicle. Now, both of these men were arrested and taken to the Orient Road Jail. Garrett?
It sounds like it was quite an operation, but has now been busted, according to police, with that breaking news there right here on the Tampa Connection. So, Nancy, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break here on Florida Live, but we'll be right back. Welcome back into Florida Live. Garrett Wymer here, and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon, live on Fox Local and on YouTube. A lot going on at Gatorland. We told you about Uncle Sam, their newest addition that was rescued on July 4th. But that's just really just the beginning of things that are going on and going to be going on there that we want to get you updated on. So we're going to go ahead and bring in Savannah Bone from Gatorland. And Savannah, always good to talk with you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Garrett, you still haven't been out here. We got to get you out here soon.
Yes, absolutely. We do need to do that. There's no doubt about that. So talk to me about Uncle Sam. I know it's a very appropriate name. It couldn't have picked probably a better name. But just talk to us a little bit about how he's doing there and now that he's settling in a little bit.
Yeah, so Uncle Sam was an alligator that was out in the villages, and he was chasing lawnmowers and landscaping equipment. So in cases like that, when the alligator's pretty feisty, they have to be removed. Luckily for Uncle Sam, our friend Robbie Kesey caught him up. He's a trapper up that way and brought him over here to Gatorland. And man, he was fighting the whole way, but he's doing great out there now. He came and almost ate from us the other day, but not quite yet. But he's a firecracker out there, that's for sure.
So how's he doing now? Any less feisty?
You know, when alligators come to Gatorland through our rescue program, they're usually the big dog in the lake they're in. And then they get here and they see other alligators that are twice their size and they kind of go, oh, wait a minute. Where am I at now? Land of the Giants? So they kind of settle down a little bit that way.
Hey, whatever it takes there. Now, you talk about the foundation and the conservation work that it does. I know this is just kind of part of those important efforts.
Yeah, so Gatorland Global is the way that we do that, and we take in nuisance alligators all year long here at Gatorland. When a trapper catches an alligator in the state of Florida, generally those are taken to processing or they're euthanized or sold to a hunting camp. We just want to give homes to some of these big old guys that, like, well, this guy was actually doing something, but most of them aren't doing anything, just wrong place, wrong time. And we like to bring them here and let them live out their lives in alligator paradise.
And speaking of the conservation efforts, you just recently went on a trip to Jamaica Talk to us about
Yes, yes, yes.
what were you doing there?
So Gatorland Global is the primary financial backer of the Holland Bay Crocodile Sanctuary in Jamaica. And it's a really lovely place, completely off the grid. And what they do there is they head start crocodiles. So they hatch out at the sanctuary, and then later in the year, we'll go and give those bigger crocodiles a veterinary check. And then we'll take them to secret spots in Jamaica and we'll release them so that they can live in the wilds of Jamaica where they're supposed to be.
So successful trip then?
Successful trip. It's always a successful trip. I wish I could film more, but it's more of a GPS and tracking issue, right? Because there is poaching, like there's poaching in Florida and there's poaching all around the world as well. So we kind of don't film that part of it because we don't want anybody to see anything where they might be able to go and like kind of scoop those crocodiles up out of there.
Yeah, what kind of additional challenge does that create when you are kind of dealing with that, kind of aspect of things?
With the poaching issue, I mean, it happens in Florida too. I don't know if I think you guys covered the story about Bungie. So Bungie was an alligator at Payne's Prairie, and someone tried to illegally catch him and poach him for meat. I'm imagining. I don't really know why people do that because you can buy it, I think, at the grocery store. But anyways, he got a bungee cord wrapped around his top jaw, and then I guess when they tried to pull him in, it broke. And it was on there for several months, the bungee cord, but he's here now and he's doing great as well. So, poaching is always an issue when it comes to animals that people like to eat.
Conservation trips, you got another one scheduled here soon, going to Australia. What's going to be going on there?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about going to Australia. I'm learning how to fly a drone right now. So hopefully in some of these areas, I'm going to be able to get some amazing drone footage of some of the big crocs there. I mean, we have big crocs, 15-foot crocodiles, almost 16-foot crocodiles at Gatorland. But over there, they got 18-foot, 19-foot, 20-foot crocodiles. And I just want to be able to capture how big they are. I'm doing a lot of educational presentations at some schools over there. And then I'm probably going to go out and live for like a week or a weekend with an indigenous community there. And I'm very excited about that as well.
Oh, that's awesome. What all will that entail?
So getting to these communities, you have to have a permit and you have to be invited. It would be like if you were going out to see like the Miccosukee tribe or something like that. You can't just go out there. And so they've been kind enough to invite me to come out there. And I wish I could pronounce the name properly, but I can't. I think it's Remingini, but I could be completely wrong. And just kind of go out there, live off the land, learn about different cultures, learn about their relationships with crocodiles, those cultures, because a lot of the little kids, they all have tokens. And whatever token you have is the thing that you protect. And there's a little girl over there and her token is a crocodile. So it's going to be really interesting to talk to her about crocodiles and how she sees them versus how the rest of Australia sees them and versus how, people see crocodiles in the state of Florida as well.
That's going to be really interesting. I hope you have a great time, and we'll definitely have to follow up with you after because I can't wait to hear more about everything that you're going to experience there in Australia. Let's also talk about Gatorland having a presence coming up at SharkCon.
SharkCon. So I've never been to SharkCon. And I just watched this video with this girl that swims with these great white sharks. And in my mind, I was thinking, what's wrong with you, right? And then I thought, oh, well, people probably watch my videos and think the exact same thing. So while my eyes aren't very much captured by sharks, I think they're incredible. And one of our Gatorland Global board members, Joe Wazalewski, who is a conservation biologist, and he's also our consulting biologist for Gatorland Global Projects. He's going to do a big presentation at SharkCon and talk about Gatorland Global, talk about his travels around the world, and it's going to be really great. I'm going to be there too, but the focus is 100% going to be on this presentation that Joe is doing. And he's like a world-renowned conservation biologist and works in practical conservation. The science is all great, but practical conservation is more along the lines of getting the truck fixed so that the truck can go get the meat to feed the crocodiles, like those kinds of things, simple things like that make the world of difference in other countries.
Yeah, a lot goes into it, but it's important work. Just
It
bottom
is.
line for why it's so important, Savannah, for folks watching.
You know, just preservation of species around the world. You know, if you're an apex predator, you're pretty much at the top of the food chain. And generally, when the apex predator is doing well at the top of the food chain, everything else falls into place. So we have our alligators and crocodiles here in the state of Florida, and we love them all so much. Gatorland just hatched out new American crocodiles, and I'm actually going down to South Florida next week to the site where most of the American crocodiles do hatch out in South Florida, and we'll take up those babies and we'll microchip them, get all of their bio data, and then we'll release those baby crocodiles back to the mom the next morning. She won't know the difference. She'll still protect them, but we'll also have a way to track those crocodiles. Like if we scan them, if we catch them 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, we'll know where they came from, where they hatched out, what size they were, whether they're male or female. Like so much information that we have.
A lot of good stuff going on, a lot of good work that you're doing, Savannah. We appreciate you joining us here on Florida Live to talk about it, and can't wait to catch up with you again soon.
Yeah, that'll be great, Garrett. Thank you so much for having me. See you guys at SharkCon this weekend.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here on Florida Live, and we'll be right back. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon, live on Fox Local and on YouTube. The city commissioners with Key West voted last night to approve a 287G agreement, one of those agreements between the police department and ICE. We've talked a lot about that over the past few weeks and months, but this is interesting because this was a vote that basically kind of goes back on previous changes that they had made, and then a threat from the state attorney general. So joining us live now to break all of this down for us is Mitch Perry, who's a reporter with the Florida Phoenix. And Mitch, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Yeah, great to be here.
So Mitch, break this down for us. You can explain a little bit better than I did in the setup here, because it was an interesting meeting yesterday with a lot of people speaking, wanting the city commission not to take this step.
Yeah, that's correct. This goes back to, well, let's go back to just last week, last Monday, June 30th. Frankly, the folks in Key West weren't really aware that their police chief had signed an agreement, a 287G agreement with ICE back in March, actually. for whatever reason, it wasn't really well publicized. And so when folks learned about that in Key West in late June, they were very unhappy about it. They held this meeting just a little over a week ago, and they said, we didn't know anything about this. This is not approved by us, and we're going to void that agreement. Well, the very next day, Attorney General James Uthmeier put out a scathing letter and basically said, look, you're doing that. You're now officially a sanctuary city, which is banned in Florida. You better change what you're doing there. And the next day, I think it was last Wednesday, the mayor of Key West then said, we're going to have an emergency meeting next week, which was actually last night, to look back and see, we're going to have another vote on this. And that's what happened last night. It was over 3 hours of intense debate. Almost every person there, and there were over 100 in attendance. I'm not sure how many actually spoke, dozens spoke. Only 2 people were for this, keeping this going through this agreement. Everybody else said, don't do it, don't do it. But they went ahead 4-2 to vote to go ahead and do that. They are now another local law enforcement agency that has signed an agreement with ICE regarding immigration enforcement.
You talked about the hours of public comment. It looked like it was a packed house at that meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. And people were very passionate about not doing this. And in fact, there's some legal gray area here in terms of, frankly, there was a law passed earlier this year by the legislature that does say essentially that counties with jail facilities have to have an agreement with ICE. So all 67 counties in this state do have that. That's not the same thing with the local municipalities and police departments. So some people were advocating, look, don't do anything. Some people were saying, of course, don't do this agreement, stay where you are right now. But others were even arguing, just postpone this. There is another legal situation going on in South Miami where they are challenging having municipalities have to agree on a 287G agreement, and that is still working its way through the courts. So yeah, the commissioners heard for very much passionate arguments about this. They said, we're Key West, we're different here, we don't do this, these are our neighbors, we don't need to be going out and going after these folks. But the threat of losing their jobs for the city commission was, I guess, too much to bear, because ultimately they did decide to go back over the vote that they did last week. Last week they voted 6-1 to avoid that agreement. Last night they voted 4-2 to have another go at it, as it were.
I'm glad you brought up that point, Mitch, about it being kind of a gray area right now, and obviously with that ongoing fight from the city of South Miami that's challenging this. But we have seen the state leaders, the Attorney General, not hesitate to make these threats against, not just, this isn't the first case of this that we have seen. We've seen it with cities, a number of them across the state that have kind of felt this pressure to go ahead and sign these agreements, even though there are still questions about whether it needs to be done.
Well, even in Orlando there, Mayor Buddy Dyer made some remarks at one point, and James Uthmeier wrote a letter to him the next day, and Mayor Dyer said, well, look, we've already signed an agreement with 287G, so, back off with us. But yeah, Fort Myers has happened earlier, and several city commissioners at the Fort Myers area were questioning whether they should do this. They backed away when Uthmeier sent a threatening letter. And look, the DeSantis administration has shown over its course of its time in office that they will throw people out of office, right? We saw that with Monique Worrell in the Orange Osceola County jurisdiction. Andrew Warren, state attorney in Hillsborough County, he was suspended, lost his job when the DeSantis administration said that he wasn't playing by the rules. So these threats are taken very seriously. That's why you saw last night in Key West, dozens of folks wearing Be Brave t-shirts. They knew that this was going to be a challenging vote for the city commission, because when you have the state, when you have Ron DeSantis, when you have James Uthmeier threatening basically your jobs, that puts, that's very serious. But the folks in the audience were saying, look, be brave, be courageous. What do you hear? What are you elected for? What do you believe in? And so, that was the tenor of the evening. It was very intense. But again, at the end of the day, I think I wasn't really surprised. I mean, obviously, once that letter went out by Uthmeier last week, we really haven't seen, when it comes to these 287G agreements, too much defiance, with the exception, as you mentioned, of South Miami.
It's going to be interesting to continue to watch because this is certainly not over yet. Mitch Perry, reporter with the Florida Phoenix, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Thank you very much.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us here on Fox Local and on YouTube. This morning, some Democratic members of Florida's congressional delegation joined with some former officials who at one point worked with NOAA to talk about and criticize proposed cuts to staff and funding with NOAA, the National Weather Service, and other entities like that. I want to play for you a little bit of that as we heard from Dr. Robert Atlas, who is the Director Emeritus of NOAA's Atlantic Oceanographic and Meteorology Laboratory. So a bit of a mouthful there, but he was talking about what he sees as the potential impacts of some of these cuts that are proposed by the Trump administration for fiscal year 2026.
I'd like to show a figure of the improvements that have been made. I know this isn't too clear being held up like this, but there have been constant improvements over the years since we started a hurricane forecast improvement project in NOAA. And every year, the errors in our track and our intensity forecasts have been reduced. And this is particularly important because previously there had been no improvement in hurricane intensity forecasting. In forecasting the intensity of hurricanes, where they will make landfall, and being able to extend the forecast lead time on those is extraordinarily important. The elimination of AOML and its cooperative institute at the University of Miami can have a very detrimental effect on hurricane forecasts for our nation. There would be no more scientific support for NOAA's Hurricane Hunter missions, as well as for airborne drones and ocean gliders. All of this expertise exists in the Hurricane Research Division and the Physical Oceanography divisions of AOML. As a result, vital data would no longer be assimilated into hurricane models or be available to forecasters and researchers. In addition, there would be a halt in the development and improvement of models like NOAA's state-of-the-art hurricane analysis and forecast system, which produces the most accurate intensity forecasts of any model in the world. It is estimated that this loss, the loss of AOML and its cooperative institute, would result in a 20 to 40% decrease in hurricane forecast accuracy, which
all of that taking place as the NOAA administrator nominee was part of a confirmation hearing on Capitol Hill earlier today. That's Kevin Guthrie. You know him from the executive director of the Florida Division of Emergency Management. He is taking part in this meeting with the Homeland Security Department. We see Tampa Mayor Jane Castor there as well. And all of this is part of the FEMA Review Council. This is a group that's supposed to advise the president and recommend some changes to disaster response. So let's go ahead and listen in as Kevin Guthrie speaks in this meeting.
Mr. Hawley.
A change to 44 CFR, 2 CFR, any type of federal regulation are clearly within his roles and authorities as the acting administrator. And then secondly, in parallel to that, we're looking at things that are going to take some type of statutory change that would be obviously need to start with Congress and the Senate. The next thing that we have been doing and will continue to do is conduct listening sessions. You heard Governor Youngkin speak about that. You heard Sheriff Rosie and Mayor Jane talk about that as well. We all continue to do that, both informally and formally, in taking information and digesting that information. We've been giving that information to council staff so that they can run the analysis on that and get it into our presentations as we meet each week. Something that is starting to emerge, and I shouldn't say starting to, I think we as a practitioners group knew that this was always the case. EMAC, the Emergency Management Assistant Compact, continues to be our number one go-to thing. I think what's starting to evolve from that, and we've heard this from numerous directors and governors, I'm sure the governors have heard this as well. You see evidenced by Texas. You see evidence by New Mexico and other disasters that we've had around the country this year. Governors will send their staff. And I will tell you, as a governor working directly for Governor Ron DeSantis, he never asks me the question, are we going to get reimbursed? He always does the right thing. He sends the people out the door. We'll figure out the reimbursement later. But at the end of the day, governors will be much more apt to send their individuals out the door if they know they are going to get reimbursed. And how can we improve that? And we think we have some ways that we will be recommending to the acting administrator, as well as potentially 44 CFR revisions to help get that done, so that governors know that when they do send help, they're not ultimately going to be given a bill and that come out of local taxpayer dollars versus coming from the federal government. Last, what things that's naturally I shouldn't say last, second to last, what are things that have traditionally been a federal role that may be able to be taken over by another partner or non-traditional partner? For example, we've already had associations starting to come forward saying, you know what, we with maybe just a tad bit more money, we could actually take on that role and do that. I'll give you one example, EMAC, back to where I started from. Is typically overseen in large part by the National Emergency Managers Association, and they continue to want to play an active role in that. So could they do more? I think the answer is they're ready, willing, and able to have that conversation, and perhaps it could relieve some personnel at the NOC or the RCCs, and some other things that may be able to help us downsize traditional federal government and maybe put that back into a better, more highly functioning space. And then the last thing is we continue to have a conversation, still flushing it out, and I believe this might be happening at the governor's council as well. But parametric insurance is, what is the role for parametric insurance in disasters as we move forward? You know, those specific parameters. Could you have a parametric insurance policy? The simple answer is yes. That's centered around debris removal. That is probably the most costly act that comes out of a disaster, is debris removal, followed probably very closely by emergency protective measures. And then as you get into the permanent categories of work, is there a place there? And I know that some of our former administrators have probably some ideas and concepts about parametric insurance as well. So those are the things that we have been working on. I'm going to turn it over to Mark briefly and let him speak about anything else that I may have forgotten or that he's also talked to them about.
Thanks, Kevin. And first of all, just let me say, being part of this subcommittee is an honor for me. You've got three of the best emergency managers probably in the country, leaders, with Bob Fenton representing FEMA, and of course Kevin, and then NIM, and they all have dealt with a number of disasters. So the American people should be have comfort in knowing that you've got people that have the experience that can make the right recommendations. You know, at our last meeting, the secretary gave us the directive to go out and meet with stakeholders, and we've taken that very seriously. And I know Kevin already referenced that. We are going to be doing regional listening sessions. We've got one tomorrow here in Louisiana, but we've also invited the state emergency management directors from Delaware, we call them the lower Atlantic hurricane states, down to Florida, all the way across to Texas, to be with us tomorrow to give their input, as well as Governor Landry's organizations here in Louisiana that have input as well. We're also looking at doing one on the West Coast, in the northern states, and then also with Tornado Alley. And I think, again, the American people know that we're trying to get input, nonpartisan input from citizens, from parts of the country that deal with different types of disasters, from hurricanes to wildfires to, the flooding that we're seeing tragically in Texas. So I feel really good about that we're going to be able to give the secretary what she asked with this input. And it's going to take a lot of effort. We have a short time frame, but we are giving it our best effort to do that. So that's all I have to add to what you have to say.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Mark. And, I think Mark honed in on one thing. I know that there was a lot of social media post and ghost, if you will, of individuals that felt that this particular makeup was a lot of a hurricane Southeast United States individuals. I will tell you, this response and recovery group has painstakingly made sure that we have gotten out of our boxes, out of our states. I've been communicating with the New York State Commissioner for emergency management, who gave me a very, very well thought out process of preparedness metrics and things that she was able to pull together. For instance, 73% of all preparedness dollars in the state of New York have gone to all but about 14 nationally declared disasters. In other words, 202 of those disasters were not federally declared, and 73% of the people that responded to those were trained by individuals directly through FEMA preparedness dollars. I think that's the type of stuff that we don't hear about, and we need to hear more about that. How the federal funding is being effective in these states. So again, we have been listening, as my mom used to say, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth to listen twice as much, and we've been doing that. So I would just say we're going to continue to do that, and I appreciate Bob, I appreciate Mark, Nim, for their leadership on this council, and we look forward to bringing you more recommendations in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope you can all tell the 2 subcommittees have been hard at work. The practitioner subcommittee, as we refer to it, has done an outstanding job of bringing in those that have input that would like to discuss more about not only their experiences with FEMA, but how we might make it better for their states, involving governors, involving emergency management, United States military personnel, law enforcement, all are invited to this table. I want to welcome and thank also Brock Long for being here, former FEMA administrator, and Craig Fugate, 2 former administrators of FEMA and live to tell about it. So, gentlemen, thank you. A wealth of information. I would suggest to the committee, let's get all their knowledge that we can before we allow them to leave here. So the final...
This FEMA Review Council meeting continuing right now at the Department of Homeland Security. We just heard from Kevin Guthrie, the Florida Division of Emergency Management Executive Director, who is on this review council that is tasked with providing some advice to the president when it comes to changes with disaster response, a number of other things. Tampa Mayor Jane Castor is on this review council as well, as is the Miami-Dade County Sheriff Rosie Cordero Stutz. So we are continuing to monitor this afternoon, but we're going to take a quick break here on Florida Live, and we'll be right back after this. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon, live on Fox Local and on YouTube. It is a case dismissed against a Brevard County man. Jeff Abramowski was released back in April originally after spending 2 decades behind bars. He was previously convicted in the 2006 murder of a 78-year-old convicted in 2006 of the murder of 78-year-old Courtney Crandall. Was sentenced to life in prison after that, but then, according to his attorneys, exonerated after a judge overturned that conviction, vacated that sentence based on some new DNA evidence that was introduced and presented that indicated others were at the crime scene. We heard this afternoon from Jeff Abramowski talking about being released and the emotions he has gone through throughout this period.
Mr. Abramowski, I mean, for what you've been through, what you've gone through, many people might feel angry or bitter for the time that was stolen from them. How are you feeling?
Well, that rightly so, a person's gonna be, a lot of pent-up frustration and stress and all that, and it leads to, bitterness and anger towards the people that have done this. But you have to understand with this, though, there was a different administration. The administration that's in there now actually took the time to do the right thing and investigate, and that's why we're standing here today. So, and also my attorney, Kevin McCann, said, let it go. He says, because you're not truly a free man if you're out there with all that pent up in your heart. So I'm learning to, just do the right thing and just move on. I got a great family and I love them, and I'm not gonna let this consume me.
Can you compare your emotions from when you first walked out of the jail with the possibility of this hanging over your head to now where it's over?
Well, I was just telling Kevin and Jamie and, and the guys from Florida today, I says, when I first realized, that it was over finally, I was getting out of the shower yesterday and I looked and I says, wow, it came into my mind, it's like, I actually have freedom of choice again. And, people don't realize the little things that you do and don't do and decide whatever you're going to do for a day. It's so important to you that when that's taken away from you, you don't know what you're really able to do in the free world until you don't have it no more and you walk.
That's Jeff Abramowski, who is no longer a convicted killer, no longer behind bars, but a free man after nearly 2 decades. He is going to seek compensation.